Hello everyone. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully the audio is sounding good. I have the mic pretty up to the full gain, and the mic is close to me, so hopefully the sound sounds good. I guess I could check the sound settings if we need help. But yes, that is, well, let me check the sound settings first. Okay, audio sounds great. Says my wonderful prof. Good, good. Yeah. This is good. So that was my original track, Second Chances. It was Second Chances, but it was my first time mastering that piece of music, and we'll talk about that in just a second here. Let me take the banner off. You can check my music out at soundofgraver.com. Where's the banner? There it is. All right, cool. So we've got that. Let me go back to the comments section, and then I think I got the video ready. Good, looks good to me. Just realized my phone's, I should put my phone on airplane mode. That way it doesn't, yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, and don't worry, the phone landed on the bed. Okay, so, good. Video looks good too, looking clear and beautiful. Well, wonderful. Wonderful. So, yeah, we're gonna be talking about minimal art, or the minimal art movement. It is called minimalism, even though I don't think the term was used back at the time of the conception of the minimal art movement. Now, minimalism does mean a lifestyle. It means like, oh, be Spartan, less is more. So we do use that colloquially as a word for a lifestyle choice. But minimalism also is a term for the visual art movement back in the, in America back in the 60s and 70s. So I'm excited to talk about it. This isn't really this isn't going to be the first of many streams on art discussion, but when I feel like talking about art, I want to talk about it. And I'm no expert on the visual art. We're learning together, so hopefully it'll be a fun experience. Before I get into the chat, in preparation for the stream, I had all these snapshots of these images that I really liked as far as the minimal artists were concerned, but StreamYard made it a little difficult. I can't present it like a slideshow, and I don't have PowerPoint. I don't have any of that Microsoft stuff on this machine here, on this iMac. And so it's an old machine. It's not compatible. So instead, I'll just do the simple Google Images. But I also, earlier today, I found a wonderful resource, and that's the Museum of Modern Art website. And it's really clear, it's concise, it's to the point, it's not dense, it's very easy to read. So we'll go through the characteristics, outlining the characteristics of this particular art movement through that website. I also have a little bit of notes, but it's more or less doing the same thing. An opportunity to show you my handwriting. There you go. I thought I was getting worse with my handwriting. It actually just depends on the type of pen you use. So there you go. Anyway, let's go ahead and welcome the chat, see who's in. We're talking about art. Art is fun, art is important, and that's really the emphasis, the theme of my streams, plural. All right, Ace Moic, channel member, says, hello there, Madam SE, and all the humans in the comments. Yes, because we are all human, I hope so. I hope no one's a bot here. Maybe one of these 10 views is a bot. Who knows? Ghost Planet, good to see you. Private Eye, also good to see you. Thank you for coming. Brian Gilmartin has a comment already right out of the gate. The mentality of the less is more, because that was my previous title. The mentality of less is more can only go so far before it becomes an excuse for laziness and mediocrity. We're going to be talking about that in the context of this art movement, because it's important. By the way, we talked about conceptual art, that movement, last week. And unlike this stream, we didn't have images, so I'll post images this stream, or show you guys images. But it's more or less a crossover. It happened really in the same timeline in art history, and maybe it's a reaction to different things, but some of the artists that you would find in the conceptual art movement could be also part of the minimal art movement. It just depends on the context, even if there's no representation of context in this art. All right, let's continue on. Final Fantasy fan number 12 is in. Good to see you as well. Junk is also in. Good evening. I got you. I got you, Junk. Yeah. Thanks for the correction. But God, hopefully is bestowing his grace upon my talk about art, because it could be a controversial topic. I'm not going to be controversial. Anything I talk about is what they agree with as far as the artists themselves. All right. Crystal Ashes, channel member, and is in the house. Good to see you. Nice to see. Oh, thank you for the belated birthday gift for Prof stream last night. It was a good stream. We missed your presence, but maybe you've caught the replay. It was a good stream. The topic that he talked about was very, very interesting. The genre of the turn of the century, the theater genre at the turn of the century. Well, really the turn of the 20th century. That was French, and I can't remember the French term for it, but it was basically if I remember correctly, if not the instantiator, it pushed the horror genre a little bit more. I don't know if that's the original origin, but Professor knows it. He knows what I'm talking about. You all know what I'm talking about. Those of you who saw his stream last night. Scorpiopio, good to see you. Ace Mowick has a comment here. The one time I agree with less is more is when there is an oversaturation of technical musicians that think they're the next Yngwie Malmsteen. Malmsteen? I forgot how to spell his name. I think you spelled it correctly. Yeah, he was basically that rock musician who really just knew the classical technique. And I think he's notorious for being full of himself, and at the same time he is a true elite because he's so good at guitar playing. So I probably need to listen to more of him. I haven't listened enough to King Crimson and Yngwie Malmsteen and all that. Yeah, Private Eye is not correcting, but clarifying that some people think minimalism is a way of life. It is a term for a way of life, especially in the Japanese culture. Yeah. All right, Andreas Hernandez, you didn't miss anything. We started, and since you're a channel member, your comic gets posted up on screen. Samuel Proctor, good to see you. You say, I hear the term minimalism, and the first thing I think of is the soulless blank walls and architecture of the modern suburban homes. Well, the origin of that is going to be discussed in the stream. So any of you who are visual art or into visual art, I think this is just knowing the basics of some things that have happened in art history, especially in the 20th century, since it's kind of it's the century that came before our time, even though I was born in the 20th century. Some of you haven't been born in the 20th century. That's not grammatically correct. Anyway, Adega Outlaw, good to see you too. All right, let's see. Crystal Asher says, no problem. Yeah, I watched it earlier today. Really wish I could have been there live, but time zones are a big issue there. Yeah, I don't know what the time difference is, but some people are, as across the pond, as we say, over in the UK. Are you based in the UK? We got some UK listeners. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about minimalism before the stream runs too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start with the Museum of Modern Art website, which is actually a very elegant looking website, if I do say so myself. I will share that and see how... one sec, I have to fix something. All right, let's share this website. And there's going to be some definitions that the Museum of Modern Art gives us, which I think is very concise. It was in accordance with my notes, so I'm just going to go ahead and share that and see how that looks. Okay, so that looks great. And there are examples of what they're talking about here with minimalism. So let's read and look at some works, look at some pictures, and I'm going to also showcase a few, quite a handful of artists, because it's important. I like it. So let's go ahead and read. All right, I'm going to click on my screen here. All right. So minimalism is a primarily American artistic movement of the 1960s, characterized by simple geometric forms devoid of representation and content, or representational content. Relying on industrial technologies and rational processes, minimalist artists challenged the traditional notions of craftsmanship using commercial materials such as fiberglass, aluminum, and often employing mathematical systems to determine the composition of their works. So I'm going to go through this website and then just do a little bit of my notes, just convey my notes a little bit, or talk what I've written down, say what I've written down, yeah, and then it's gonna be more or less off the cuff of what I think about minimalism. Is it art just because it's an art movement? Should we call it art, or is it something else? So there's a discussion to be had here. If you want to see, here are some works of artists that I do want to go over. I think Dan Flavin, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Flavin. It could be Flavin, but I think it's Flavin. John McCracken, which is a great name. Donald Judd, John McCracken, I meant to say, if I hadn't said it. Donald Judd, Joe Bear, Soluit, who is kind of a crossover from conceptual art, Anne Truitt, and Dwayne Valentine, Agnes Martin. And there are actually, especially with Flavin, McCracken, Judd, and Soluit, I'm going to be actually talking about their works a little bit. But so that's the brief definition. Let's talk about its forms and structures and ideas. Simplified forms and structures. So this is Dan, I'm just going to pronounce it Flavin. You guys can correct me in the chat or in the comment section below. So this is his fluorescent tubes or fluorescent lights about minimalism. The early 1960s brought about a significant shift in American art. Largely, this is key, largely in reaction to the critical and popular success of the highly personal and expressive. It's a reaction against expressiveness. Well, now I have to read the sentence again. Largely in reaction to the critical and popular success of the highly personal and expressive painterly gestures of the abstract expressionism. So this is one reaction. There's another reaction too that we will see. The minimalism is a reaction against expressionisms, especially the abstract expressionism that came before, I think in the 1950s, maybe it started earlier, maybe in the 1940s. So something like a brush stroke, something like nuance, something like a vivid gesture should be avoided with something like minimalism. Minimalist artists produced pared down three-dimensional objects devoid of representational content. Their new vocabulary of simplified geometric forms, that's key, made from humble industrial materials such as fiberglass and aluminum, and often employ, I thought this was easy to read, maybe it wasn't. Can I say this again? I'm gonna highlight this. Their new vocabulary of simplified geometric forms made from the humble industrial materials such as fiberglass and aluminum, and often employing mathematical systems to determine the composition of their works, challenged traditional notions of craftsmanship. They said that before. The illusion of three dimensions, the spatial depth, or it's the illusion of spatial depth, and the idea that a work of art must be one of a kind. Those are very important components. Let's say that again. Defying the notions of craftsmanship, creating an illusion of three dimensions. We'll get to that in a little bit. Spatial depth as well. And this is key. It challenges the idea that a work of art must be one of a kind. Now, I do believe a work of art should be one of a kind. And let's talk about the forms and repetition, and also materials of minimalism. There might be some repetition, and maybe that was on purpose, some repetition between these topics and subcategories. But again, it's worth repeating for retaining that information, that knowledge. So this is another factor. This is another reaction that minimalism was toward previous art that had come before. So we talked about a reaction against expressionism and abstract expressionism in particular, but it was also a reaction to the aftermath of World War II. So as follows, it reads, after World War II, manufacturers in the United States stopped producing things for the war effort and turned their focus to consumer goods. People were hungry to buy everything that was not available during the war, and companies created new mass production techniques to fill the orders. Pop artists like Andy Warhol borrowed the materials, techniques, and imagery of mass production for their art. Warhol, for example, reproduced a newspaper photograph of a fatal car crash by silk screening it onto a canvas with synthetic orange paint. Taking a cue from the pop artists, the minimalist artists used manufacturing materials and industrial fabrication in their work too, but left the images behind. They left them out. Minimalists helped challenge the idea that the artists show us our world depicted in drawing, painting, or sculpture, and that each is unique in its own original. So that was a challenge. They wanted to do away with that. Instead, the minimalists adopted the techniques and materials of the factory and showed us our new 1960s world of industrial mass-produced beauty. So let's actually talk about that. Before I lose my train of thought, here are some works. Yayoi Kusama, just a repetition of just stamps. I think they're stamps. Accumulation of stamps. Great. Soluit with his not tubing, his cubes. I forgot what. Maybe it's fiberglass. I'm not sure. And then these glasses. I'm not quite sure the material here. Eva Hesse, I think is her name, or Hess. I can't remember her name. How to pronounce it. But again, there's repetition. A lot of the material here, a lot of the cubes, permutation of cubes and the same material here. You can see 1962, 1966, and 1968. A lot of titles included the word serial. So a thing in a series or a thing in sequence. Also repetition, also structures is a very common title among artists and musicians of this time in art and music history. Let's talk about that though. In response to the aftermath of World War I, where everything is mass produced. So and actually I'll stop for just a second here. I'll stop sharing for just a second because I think it's important to talk about this. Is they wanted to strip any representation of uniqueness, of that one of a kind, of that original, and they wanted to challenge art with the notions of, well, let's make things and place them in a museum, exhibit them, but things that are mass produced, things like aluminum, steel, glass, fiberglass, wood, all these industrial materials. It's a very, very harsh idea. The paint, the oil painting, if it is paint, it's like touch-up paint, or it's paint for, a storage house or something. It's something industrial. It's not oil paint. It's not fine oil or fine paints or clay. It's nothing that was used before in the traditional sense. And even the traditional medium, that is like clay for sculpting and, fine paints for the canvas, that is done away with the minimal art. Rather, they're challenging the spectator or the art viewer to say, hey, well, this is significant too. We want to make everything mass produced. In fact, if you, as the artist, don't touch the material, and I talked about this with the concept art last week, if you simply order the material and arrange it by artistic direction, but someone else is handling the material, that might be more significant. And I know it's fair to criticize that notion that maybe the artist shouldn't even be part of handling the material. So the one major characteristic of minimal art is the material. If it's produced by the industry, by the consumer industry like aluminum is, then that should be a good thing to work with material art is what I'm trying to say. So now, does that make it art? And we'll talk about it after I go through all the notes, because I think that I do have a bit of critique, some off the cuff critique of that. But just know that in the 1960s, you know, and this was some years after World War II, but it was still close enough in the past where it's a response. It's a response against war, what the war had done all across the globe, how people were in want of a lot of things because of the war effort. And with these art movements in the 20th century, yeah, it was a political commentary. Art was the medium. Art was the go-to at the time to create a political statement, to create a political stance. I personally don't think that should be an exclusive thing. Like, I don't think art should be exclusively for politics. Why? Because that makes art not it doesn't distinguish art from the next thing. Like, okay, a public speech can be art because art is about politics only, and political speech is about politics only. You know what I'm saying? Or the vocation of teaching, or the vocation of writing a nonfiction piece of work. I mean, you gotta give some distinction. You know, art has its own separate place. Doesn't need to be exclusively political, but just to give you this idea of minimal art and conceptual art in the 1960s, it was a social and political statement. In this case, it was a statement and a reaction against the aftermath of World War II. So, so some interesting things have come from that. Let's continue on. I'm going to share the next page there. And there we go. So when you think of minimal art, think of things that, working with materials that are mass produced, working with repetition, working with serialism. This is very true with music. If you guys are interested in how music played in this timeline, then I'm definitely happy to help you with that. Let me grab some water real quick. All right. So that was serial forms and repetition. Materials, as we've talked about. So this is Frank Stella's, one of his black paintings. The minimalists often stayed away from traditional art materials and instead embraced the techniques of manufacturing. So, by the way, let's talk about that real quick. The techniques of manufacturing, well, what is that? That's machine made. That's things coming out of the conveyor belt. That's not personal craftsmanship, and they wanted it that way. So they instead embraced the techniques of manufacturing, commercial materials, and the industrial fabrication in order to eliminate the evidence of the artist's hand normally found in, for example, brush strokes. Minimalists reject the idea that art should reflect the personal ideas and expression of the artist. For instance, color was not used to express feeling or mood, but to simply delineate space. We'll see examples of that. For the minimalist artist, house paint and fiberglass were more valuable materials than fine oil paints and clay. And so we've got Frank Stella here. You got Dan Flavin here with his lights, and then Donald Judd with his blocks that actually can be painted or fused with light depending on the installation. And lastly, constructing space. Am I completely against this style? I'm going to say no, but there's a little bit of a catch. I actually like a lot of what I see with minimal art per se. The question is, would I call it art? And that's the thing. So again, we'll talk about that once I'm done with my notes. Constructing space. So one of the goals of the minimalists, minimalist artists, was to produce work that engaged the surrounding space. So this is in opposition to art that is hung on the wall, or a sculpture that you do need to be pretty much fixed at one point to behold the sculptor. This is true of painting and so on. So, of course, it says our art is always made to be looked at, but these artists sought to involve viewers in a more physical way, acknowledging that their perception shifts as they move through space. Sculpture of the past often employed this understanding, just as often as it did not, with some sculptors intending their work to be viewed from one fixed point, just like I said. As with a painting, three-dimensional works by minimalist artists used a wide range of materials to engage both the surrounding space and the viewer. So it did two things. First is that their implementation, and this is one. I mean, Richard Serra, I think here, this cube, cubes, their thing, just cubes installed in this physical space. Well, they're, you can see this side of the cube, but if you walk around, you're going to see another side of the cube, meaning that the idea is, whether it's ugly or attractive, the idea is that the spectator will move around to see different views of the same piece. Now, are you going to call it an art piece? I think it's going to honestly depend on the object in my experience, but that might sound subjective, but well, we'll see as we go. I'm learning as I go. Robert Morris, Untitled here, 1969. That I think is called Wall Hangings, and so you can see like the feet of this kind of drapery going out, extending out onto the floor. We'll see some other examples of that. So something that's intruding away from the wall, onto the floor, onto maybe the middle of the room. You have a fluorescent light that's just in the middle of a completely empty room, called Pink Out of a Corner, 1963. So yeah, that's the idea. And I will stop sharing. I thought that was fairly brief, at least to me. But in conjunction with what Museum of Modern Art was saying, I've got some characteristics myself. So here's number one. Characteristics of minimal art: hard edges, lines, geometric shapes, blocks of color, monochromatic, but also just straight color next to each other, limited color schemes. Another characteristic is that this minimal art should be devoid of meaning and representation. So it really shouldn't represent anything in the real world. Basic materials, as we've talked about, in particular industrial materials, and also repetition, permutation, and serialism of some kind. So a repeating of the same object, a repeating of the same gesture, so to speak, but there's not meant to be a gesture or there's not meant to be a nuance or a phrase or a cadence. It's supposed to be I would say a mechanical, like a quite machine-like, quite robotic in repetition. It's supposed to mark the industry and consumerism. So those are the characteristics, and yes, I think those were all my notes, but I think the museum covered most of my notes, so that's good. Thank you, Museum of Modern Art. I think, have I gone there before? I don't think I did. I think I've only been to New York one time in my life. I don't think we went, but I can't remember. If my mom's listening, maybe she took us, but I was in like 8th grade. So let's end it there. Now, actually, I do want to type in some artists and examples, but after I just open up a window to do that, we will go ahead and look at the chat, see what you guys have to say. How do you feel about this, is what I'm trying to say. So, let's see what you guys have to say. Let's see. Oh, Crystal Ashes is in Iceland. Okay, yeah, that's a jump. Okay, so Professor's usually streaming like about 1 a.m. your time. Professor and I are up at 1 a.m., so we're nocturnal creatures for sure. But it makes sense, yeah. Makes sense if you can't make it, but yeah. Good. All right. Brian Gilmartin says, American 1960s. Oh boy, I can already tell where this is going. Yeah, I mean, Americans really had a lot to say, and we I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert at all, but we did face the war differently. We did face the two world wars differently. Of course, we felt the effects, especially of World War I, but it was, besides Pearl Harbor, it was a away from us. Well, apart from the soldiers that went there, of course, we don't want to forget that. But and I think the 1960s created a hyper indulgence of saying whatever the flip people wanted to say. And I will say that even with things like the art movement, like conceptual art and minimal art, remember, as I said last week, they were very anti-institution, very specifically with the art institutions at the time, the academics, or well, not the academics, but how art was popularized and commercialized. They were against that kind of institution, but they weren't so against institutions where they wanted to break away from showcasing their art in public funded museums and spaces. Nice looking spaces, I must say. Some of these spaces are good looking, and I'll show you some. But anyway, yeah, there's like this there's a lot of indulgence, like cerebral indulgence, where they had the room, they had the free speech, they had the ability to say things that can be controversial, of course, but also contradictory. Things that I will say some of these notions, and I hope I present them. I hope I'm thinking them up right now and present them on the stream. Some of these notions really do contradict. They're self-contradictory. So hopefully I think of what I'm thinking about, like what I've thought about like 3 hours ago. And if I don't mention it today, I'll mention it again. Anyway, Samuel Proctor says, Jordan Peterson has talked about how most modern people get intimidated by having beautiful paintings on their walls. That may be a symptom of generations living around minimalism. Yeah. And the minimal like art style, again, I'm going to show you some, I will say some of it's kind of attractive. I like some of the results of the minimal art movement, but that's probably not what the intention was. Who's to say, right? This is all speculation. Jung says, that kind of makes sense, Samuel, because beauty forces introspection. Oh, that's so true. That is so true. That's very well put. By the way, Junk, are you Japanese, or do you just have the Japanese character next to your name? I forgot. I think you said you were. I just can't remember. So Brian's talking to Samuel. Brian says, reaction to World War II, called it. Crystal Ashes, oh, your channel member, I gotta put your comment up there. I don't mind simplicity in art, though I'd like something a bit more monochrome. Oh, you would like something a bit more than monochrome shapes, right? Andreas says, while politics in art isn't always a bad thing, and I don't think it is, you can run the risk of being outdated, since the politics of the past can be different than the politics of a future time. Well, and I think that's a really good point, Andreas, because even though you can see it through a historical lens, like, okay, I can say the minimal art movement was a reaction to the aftermath of World War II. Now, we can understand even the basics of that, but what if some 14-year-old doesn't understand that, or growing up never learns about World War II, what that's done, even on a basic level. And then, therefore, people might not understand why the art movement existed to begin with. So it is important to branch out of the reactionary art. I might do a separate stream. I've talked about it on my streams before. I might talk about reactionary art because we're susceptible to it as well. Even in our, culture war, countercultural ideas, going against politics or whatever the case is, what we respond to, that is the culture war. We have a tendency of creating or wanting to create art that is purely reactionary, and that's not the right thing to do. I'm personally of the mind that you should create something unique to you. If it's a unique story, if it has politics in it, that's fine. if there's some allegory in it, that's fine too. But it has to be separate from the current day or even historical events. You know, even if something in your story or your art form of some kind, you know, is a nod to past events. If your audience, if a lot of your audience, your readership, you know, doesn't understand the context, then they can be confused by the story. So the story should stand on its own. It can have politics in it, but it doesn't need to, and it shouldn't be an exclusive thing. All right. Crystal Ashes says, if you stand here, you see a cube, but if you stand over here, you see another side of the cube. I am an artist. Well, back then they didn't want to have the title, or most of them, at least from what I have read and heard, most of them didn't assume the title of artist. They didn't want, they didn't believe ownership, you know, the artistic ownership is a valid thing, at least in this movement. And yet they're known for these works as well. You can't escape, if you look up these art pieces, you can't escape their name. Their name is going to be revealed because they're famous, you know. They have artistic ownership of these certain pieces, whether they like it or not. Well, it's good. It's good that I have 20 people here. Pictures to come because I have some commentary on pictures. Let's see. Scorpio says, I went to the one in San Francisco a long time ago. Okay, good. Yeah, maybe I think this is the one in New York. This website. Artist, did someone call me? Yeah, Stunning Brave. Good to see you. Yeah, good to have you here. Awesome. Brian says, you know what makes this, you know what this makes me think of? How all the big chain restaurants like McDonald's did away with their color schemes and went for this cold gray squares for the, oh, dude, this topic always breaks my heart. I have to put it up. Yeah, McDonald's, man. I mean, it's just not the same. And what's more is, apart from their logo, Wendy's looks the same. It has the same, well, okay. I've seen some of the old brown synthetic brick or whatever it is with Wendy's. Maybe some chains look a little different, but they all are going, besides including their logo and their trademark, they're all going for the gray box, which was a thing, especially in Europe. That was that post, you know, structuralist theme, or no, not structuralist. That's more text and language. Would it be postmodern? I can't remember exactly in the timeline of the 20th century, but where people, especially in Europe, did away with the architecture and they like superimposed the cities with all these gray blocks, you know, these cement blocks. And I mean, that was really prevalent getting into the 50s and 60s. And McDonald's is the same. I mean, I was a kid in the 90s. So if you're a kid, you know, 90s and before, you had it good. Like, McDonald's was an experience, and it was a different experience from something like Burger King. I know that sounds strange, but it was, everything looked different, everything smelled different, and it looked like a fast food experience, but it really was a different experience. And I'm not saying McDonald's tastes worse now. I don't know. I can't remember as far as taste, but there was a different vibe before McDonald's went modern. And I blame Starbucks for that. Or you know, kind of the idea of this highly corporate, highly utilitarian idea. Oh, we make great coffee. You know, you make okay coffee, but like, I can make better coffee for a microscopic fraction of the price. Like, I'll just tell you, I think I worked it out in my head. I think I pay for a cup. I'm not saying for a pot, but for a cup of coffee, like a coffee cup of coffee, it's like 10 cents when I make it at home, 10 to 15 cents. Whereas an Americano in Starbucks, Americano is 2 shots, well, usually the size I get, 2 shots plus hot water. And it's like $4 plus tax. I was like, what have we gone? We've accepted this. Anyway, that was a sidebar. We should talk about art. But again, we talk about art, but culturally, it's the same shift from, you know, McDonald's being a personally unique McDonald's experience to what it is now. And then if you go to Wendy's, yeah, the food is different, but the experience is kind of the same. So, man, I miss McDonald's. Well, McDonald's for what it was. All right, let's go ahead and start with some of these artists. I have a few, and I'll go through them hopefully quickly, but it's important to see their art. Uh, Remember, this is art in the 1960s, getting into the 70s. And by the way, I'm not saying the Google search engine has everything right, and I'm not an expert to say yay or nay. So some of the art pieces that I might show might not be in the 60s, it could be in the 70s, or I could accidentally hit an image that's not that artist, but can look like that artist. So let's start now. Let's go before I have people lose interest. Oh wait, that's not the right screen. Present. Share screen. All right, Carl Andre is first. Let's talk about Carl Andre. And so this is really important. We have him here, him in a couple pictures. I don't know if I can I blow this up? It might take me to a website, so if you could see him okay, that's fine. I don't know if every art piece will or every artist will have their profile pic, but so this is important. This is a really good introduction to minimal art, and that is Carl Andre is one of the minimal artists. And look, I mean, this is either slabs of wood or something of faux wood or some type of material like that. You see it with kind of a labyrinth here or structure here. You also see in this quadrant here. I mean, I find this really interesting in the way of buildings. I mean, I will say minimal art does inspire the sci-fi world building. World building? World building. Something that is quite common is repetition of material. So you can see it here with the flat. I mean, it looks like a hardwood floor, you know, from any building. But then you see these slabs raised. So it is something about definition. Now, the commentary, I will say, the commentary I see, like PBS or whatever, they say there's no hierarchy, there's no meaning, there's no representation. You can't avoid it. To be honest, you can't avoid it because what is hierarchy? It's a thing of height. It's a thing of tier. Higher tier, lower tier, whatever that may be. But there is hierarchy in the raised slabs. You notice them first as a human being before the flat surface. That's just how it is. Let's continue on down. We've got in this very large room, not quite a gymnasium, but you have this very large, austere room, if that's the right word to use, if I've even pronounced it correctly, of these like little black monuments. Now, black monuments is quite a motif, shall we say, even though they don't like the word motive or motif. It is a motif when it comes to minimal art. And so you have these objects, the same objects, you know, the object is uniform even if they're different heights and different dimensions, just placed on a floor. Over here, if you can see where my cursor is, I hope you can see that. It's a slab, I think, of steel or aluminum, and he was really known for that. He was known for just putting a slab. Oh, here's an example right here. Where it's just in the floor and you're meant to walk around it and walk on it. And the idea was very controversial at the time because you're not supposed to be in the art space, not this space rather. You're not supposed to step on artwork per se. Would you call this art? I have my thoughts on that, but the whole point is they put that in there in the art movement to say you must walk on this. Don't feel prohibited to walk on this. You know, paintings on a wall. Yes, paintings are transcendent. They escape your space and time, but this art, as we have it, this is in your space. This is in your time, and you do walk on it. That was the whole idea. We've got some wood steps. Now here's the thing. I will say, now that I know what I know about art, for what I know, I wonder if they would mind me knocking over their stuff. Because they probably would be fine with it, but it is, you know, if I can walk on this, can I kick this over? You know, can I kick these slabs over? Can I lean on it? Can I obstruct this grid of wood stairs? I think they wouldn't have a problem with that. Here's another view of it. Maybe you're meant to walk on it. Could I obstruct it? Can I like um, kick these down while someone is walking on it? I mean, here's another space where it's just all the same monument. You remember repetition, serialism, just the same thing mass produced and then put in a room. So this isn't exclusive to Carl Andre. This is a common thing. Oh, here's another one. I found a better picture of that earlier, but I can't pull it up. But slabs and bricks and stone and all that stuff in a very. This room looks nice. Whatever room this is, it looks nice. Like it looks like I would have I would hang stuff on it, add some furniture, and have a little intimate concert setting. I mean, this is a very nice looking room. But the point is, this is supposed to fill in the space. Like this art is supposed to get you understanding, well, you can walk over it, you can walk around it, you can walk on it. That everything is there's no sense of profanity and sacredness when it comes to this kind of art. So step on it, step over it, it's all fine. So that is Carl Andre. Let's talk about, I'm gonna bring this guy up. I think he's Greek. Antonakos, I think is his name. And he was a minimal artist. Oh, that's him. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's better. A minimal artist of fluorescent light. And some of the stuff I think is pretty cool. This isn't the best image right here, but he was very much known for squares and rectangular shapes with light emitted. So he was an artist with, I'm going to say this. I will say he had a good sense of light. I think this is nice. Again, it is very simple. By the way, though, this has gesture. This has expression. You can't escape this. Maybe Antonakos is, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Maybe he didn't mind having gesture and expression, but this is expressive. You know, a line going up or down, a line going over, a half a circle, a line cutting through under the semicircle. That is very gestural. You can't avoid that. For someone to say, well, that wasn't, there's no meaning in that. No, this is a sense of direction. From left to right, right to left, from top to bottom, we do associate with the expression of lines and space. Might not be representative of much, but it represents some meaning. There is some meaning to lines like this and light like this. Blue gives off a very specific mood. No matter what you want to do or what you want to say, blue is very different from orange, okay? Let's see this. Yeah, like something like this. So this blue is a very different space than this right here. I think this, if you can see that, this is really colorful. I wouldn't mind like being in a lounge or a small restaurant with this kind of lighting. I think it's very attractive. I think he has a good eye for sense of color. That is very different from this very soft red orange, and very different from blue. Now, here's the thing. I like this look. The result of this may be very simple. He might not have manufactured the squares, but he had an eye for light. And I like this, the simplicity of this cube here with this square here, with this smaller square, with the lines going down, and then ultimately the square of the image. I think that is artistic. Would I call it art? Before I forget, I'll just say what I think. I wouldn't call this art per se. I would actually call it more design and artistic direction, and there is a difference between design and art. There is a difference between being a composer of music and a sound designer. Now, you can be a sound designer and put that sound design in music, but the two are very, very different. And I think it's the same way with this Greek artist here, Antonakos. I think he has an eye for light. I think he has an eye for color. Like, look at this. I mean, this is very different from blue. Like, it's a very different mood. You walk into that room, you're going to feel different from that to this again. And I personally actually like this piece here. I wouldn't mind having that in my room. I like that. It's great. Like you got the blue up here, you got the red here, and then just kind of this soft merging of the two. I'm like, that's kind of cool, that semicircle. So is this art? Here's what I would say. I think the art would be in the craftsmanship of the making of the luminescent or the fluorescent tube. So if you knew how to sculpt this, if you knew how to make this material on your own, and you had a very specialized method, and then you toyed with light and color scheme, and then you fixed it, this is a hierarchy. People say, well, no, there's no hierarchy. No, it's fixed on something. You could see the square piece here. That is a hierarchy of some kind. That's a gesture of some kind. That's dimension. That's specification. There's a little bit of craftsmanship here. I think again, Antonakos has an eye for light and color scheme and dimension. I don't know if I would call him an artist if he didn't create the craftsmanship that is the luminescent lights. Maybe he went to a special light maker and they sculpted this shape. I don't know how. Do you mass produce this kind of curvature of fluorescent lights? I don't know. I'm not the expert here. If it is easily mass produced, it probably is. I wouldn't call it art, but again, I'm not saying he isn't artistic. He has design and direction. I mean, there's design with this. I mean, he's working with a little bit of a circle cut off here and a cut off here and working with light. So he has gestures. Let's see if there's anything else down here. I don't think there's much down here. So he was known for light. Let's double check a few more before going into the oops, into the chat here. Okay, Larry Bell. Let's talk about let's take a look at him. This I actually like his stuff. Would I call it art? Again, let's take a look. Okay, so I like this. I think this looks cool. I think this would be great for sci-fi world building. You sci-fi writers and artists out there. What Larry Bell was what medium he worked with is glass and mirrors and reflections. So something like this, you would see yourself, and actually I think there's another. Yeah, you can see it's like a row of red cubes, overlooking a cityscape of some kind, Whitney Museum, I guess. I like this one though. I mean, so the work is going to look different depending on the light of day, depending on the weather, and depending on really what's going to be put inside the cube. Now, aesthetically, I think this is quite gorgeous. There's another one here with the blue and purple. Oh, yeah, yeah. Like that looks really pretty. I like it. I think there's a little bit of craftsmanship with the lines, the descendant line here, the object here. It looks neat. Actually, I would say it looks pretty good. I think it would be a really nice piece to see. And then he works with more of the transparent. Let's see if there's yeah, where is it? I saw something like this where you would see a lot of depth because of the lining of the cubes and the mirrors. So I'm pretty attracted to this concept, where yeah, it looks a little utilitarian, but there's a difference between the building here and the structure here, and the blue and white cubes here. Now, yeah, these can be mass produced. Does it make it special? Not in particular in the way of art. Again, I would really prefer the craftsmanship behind something like this, but it's not to say it's not without engaging the senses. So there's some worth to it, but again, I think it's more artistic direction, like inside this room, this very specific room, cubes facing a specific wall, and right in front of these very specific windows, very specific mathematic dimensions, and I would say specs, like I just said. Okay, it looks very interesting. It's very engaging in the sense. I would love the senses. It engages the senses. I would love to be in this room, walking around. I would be my eyes, my senses would be stimulated because of the color. This pink fused with white, with the sunlight. Then you also have sense of depth. Where's the sense of depth that I saw earlier? I guess, maybe something like this where you see an addition to the room that's not there because of the ordering of the mirrors and the glass. Something like this, I know to a lot of people looks utilitarian. It kind of is. At the same time, it's adding a lot more dimensions because of the reflections. And again, this walking through this like in a movie scene for something sci-fi or some technological thriller, I think does excite the senses. Is it complete craftsmanship? I wouldn't say so, because again, this can be manufactured. Here's a picture of him. I think that's a great picture. I think that looks great. So I mean, I like some of his results. I think it's great. Is it art? I would say it does take a lot of craftsmanship behind it to make it art. One second here. So we'll go to maybe a couple more before getting to the chat, and then actually I'd like to show a few more. So let's see. Yeah, let's check him out. Walter Di Maria. Yeah. So okay. So again, I like the result of these. This looks really cool because you're working with angular lines, a very long hallway with stairs. My prof, he knows this about me. I love architecture. I love anything that's with geometry, with stairs. I mean, like we're watching Stargate Atlantis, and I love the set work of Atlantis. I get so jazzed so easily with something like that. So something like this actually is attractive to me because I love shapes, I love stairs, I love hallways, I love architecture. And it's very, very simple. It's very, very minimal. Now, if he created this sphere, that would be something. Like if he had a personal specialized touch for this sphere, I would say that is artistically done. We've got, I guess, another one here. I just like, and he's very thoughtful of keeping this at the center with a very symmetrical. I mean, that's purely symmetrical, and there's symmetry in art, so it's not completely utilitarian. I love this room. I don't know why. Yeah, repetition. This is mass produced, but like I like the look of it. Would I call it art? No, I wouldn't call it art. But I love the look of the room. I like the look of the space. Let's see. I don't know if is that him? I think that might be him. Yeah. Oh, that's not a good picture. Maybe there. There you go. So, yeah, again, like, okay, something like a slab on a pond in front of a memorial building. Yeah, I mean, and then this long red carpet in this long white space with all these little white tubes. I mean, it's interesting to look at, but is it art? I would say no. My criteria is a little bit more than that, and then this industrial look with a lot of repetition, and here too. Yeah, like again, it looks cool. Like again, I can picture a sci-fi room with this kind of bit of decoration, but it would be commercialized. By the way, this would be a commercialized form of decoration in my sci-fi world because, again, as they say, they want to use products and materials that are mass produced. That's their whole theme. Let me stop sharing for a second. Let me grab some water real quick. All right. Okay. So I see Amy L is with us too. Good to see you. Someone named Bob. Good to see you as well. Good to have you all here. Okay. Let's work in the chat and then go through a few more people. I won't spend too much time on these artists. Brian Gilmartin says, not gonna lie, these look more like the skeleton of an art piece rather than a complete one. Speaking as someone whose figure drawings begin as stick figures before they flesh out the details. Well, yes, and that's very true of minimalism. It's supposed to be the basics. You're not even supposed to be really including yourself as an artist in this movement. So it goes straight to the basics, you know, nothing comprehensive, not even really the fundamentals. I mean, there you go. Crystal Ashes says, "Can I take a piece of wood and put it in my fireplace?" Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, would their response to my obstructing their arrangement? Some of these arrangements are quite nice looking. Would my obstruction make them mad? Because ironically, and I don't think they intended for this to happen, there's still a reverence for this type of art when you're walking through. Because I've seen it, like I've seen it, experienced it in the Milwaukee Art Museum and other museums, and I've seen it on commentary on YouTube videos where there's this reverence that people have of this art form that's not supposed to be reverent. In fact, actually, I think some of these pieces aren't shown anymore publicly because I think wealthy people have auctioned these pieces off. I don't know which ones, but I did see something of the sort. And that's what the artists were going against. They were going against the art establishment. They were going against the wealthy people. And some of these pieces can't be seen in their original form because the wealthy got to it. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. So that's the nature of the beast. That's human nature to want to adopt. Now, the minimal lifestyle, remember we were talking about minimalism is a type of lifestyle and a type of look in someone's home, for instance. Well, it was actually the same for people's homes in the 1960s and 70s where like geometric shapes took off. It did become popularized, and once some of these artists saw where it was going, then they're like, well, we don't want to affiliate with that, or we don't want to have that. We don't have that affiliation to this popular fashion movement, this popular home and decor. That we're not about that. So they went to do other things to try to break the mold, to try to always do something different, because that's what's important, right? Here's what I can't really stand about this kind of notion, this kind of ideology. It's not a political ideology. It could be. But these artists always wanted to be different, like no matter what. So if something they did differently took off 10 years later and became fashionable, they're like, well, we don't do that here. We'll have none of that. It was true with music. It's like, okay, well, okay, this became popular. I guess we have to move on to something else. Or if that didn't even happen in the music scene, their goal was not to appeal to the public masses. They not to appeal. Your music should not be commercial. It should always be controversial in some way. It should always be rough. It should always be ugly in some way, or uncomfortable in some way. So I think the two go hand in hand, the visual art movement as well as the music movement. Yeah, Andrea says those blocks look like something out of the Star Wars Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, I know. And some of these things just don't look ugly. I mean, they're not ugly to behold. Some of the work is ugly. Amiel, welcome. You say I think at some scale, art and design actually blend back together. Yeah, why does this look at something like out of Tetris? Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, on your point, Amy, there's I think there could be a healthy balance of both. For the minimal movement, at least for some of these works, it's strictly artistic direction. It's not art itself. Because I do believe that art is a degree of craftsmanship, as well as the material, as well as your art form, as well as the medium. It is craftsmanship, and it's a mastering of that craft. And artistic direction is super important, but you could be an art director and not an artist. You could be both, but an art director is a completely different vocation than an artist. And the two are very distinct things. You don't have to be an artist. You could be horrible at art and still appreciate art and appreciate good art and be a critic of good art or bad art. And you can have an eye for good art or what art is. You could be an art historian and not know a thing about how to apply it yourself. And an art director can have an eye for a thing, like he or she can build a program at an exhibition or program at a music concert and maybe someone never has played a musical instrument in their lives and they know how to construct or they know how to program a very good concert. Like a concert where pieces just really blend well together. And yeah, they're two different things, but the artist can do both things. In the case of the minimal movement, it's more about artistic direction and design and not so much about the art itself. You say also there's an artist that was a painter who did a good number of public pieces. She had a couple pieces in my city, uh, and one of her lost pieces was recently redone. I could not decide if it was if it was art or environmental graphic design or of environmental graphic design. I don't know. I figured all her panels were made in a factory, and it looked like my hunch was right. It was very hard to find this kind of information. A lot of people will profess that creating minimal art is hard because you're trying to do something without meaning, and that's very hard to do. So if you can accomplish it, then you're a pure artist or you've mastered your craft. And I think it's a silly notion. And here's what I mean. I will say it's an impossibility to remove all meaning and all representation completely. It can't be purely non-contextual. You can't have an art piece, no matter how simple it is. You cannot have an art piece without some mood or some affiliation of form, emotion, or even just concept. So for instance, when we see, and maybe we'll see it in the other examples that I have in the future, but when we see a line go up, like especially from left to right, well, at least culturally speaking in North America, we read things from left to right. When we see something ascend from left to right, that has meaning. Ascension of some kind, even if it's like a fluorescent light, it has meaning of some kind. A descending line has meaning. It's the inverse, it's the opposite. It's affiliated with the ascending line. We think of ascension and descension. We think of vertical, we think of horizontal. Horizontal does evoke a mood. A certain height of something evokes a certain mood. A fluorescent tube of light, like propped up like 3 feet from the ground or maybe 7 feet from the ground, is going to have a different feeling than if it's on the ground, maybe not even horizontal. Maybe it's just like in the middle of the floor, maybe even turned off. That's going to be a different experience. We can't, as human beings, we can't purely escape association of some kind. So when people say, "Oh, but when they produce a work of art that has no meaning, that's a very difficult thing to do." It's an impossible thing to do. It's truly impossible, and it's not done. Even if people say I did it, I achieved it, there's no meaning, there's no context, there's meaning somewhere. And because viewing art is a subjective experience between people, you can't guarantee that every person is going to react the same way. So maybe one person has no affiliation, maybe they don't think anything of the art, but that's not going to be the same as another person. Everyone has different associations based on different experiences. At the same time, we still have a universal human experience. So I will venture to say visual art or music, I will venture to say that it is impossible to have an art piece completely devoid of representation, affiliation, and meaning. We just can't, because if that's the case, we wouldn't even go to those art pieces to begin with. We wouldn't go to those exhibitions. There'd be no point. There would be no point to going to those exhibitions and saying, well, there's no meaning to this. It's like there's gonna be a gesture and meaning and affiliation of some kind. Hey, Big Al, good to see you. Been retro reviewing the 1995 Pride and Prejudice so late. Big Al, was that the one with Colin Firth and Jennifer L? Because that's my favorite one. But I'm sure there's been so many productions of that one, of that story. Stunning and Brave, Megatron says, I don't like to say what what is or isn't art, because art comes in various different forms and mediums. To me, if it looks pretty or cool, then it's art in my book. Yeah, we can disagree there. Because, you know, for me, a tennis ball looks great. It's round. It's got one of my favorite colors, which is that green yellow, more yellow than green. I love the look of a tennis ball, and I don't even play tennis. If I go to a sports store and I'm in the tennis section, which I will never be in, but it will be instantly a wonderful experience for me because my brain associates positive emotions when it comes to something like a tennis ball. Is a tennis ball art? Well, to me, a tennis ball looks cool. I love the look of a tennis ball. It's not art because it doesn't function as art. It functions as the means to winning a particular sport. Now, you can be artistic in a sport, like you can be athletic as a musician. But, you know, athleticism is going to be different in a sport as it will be with playing music. It's the same way as how certain things function. The importance of art comes from its sole function, and that is to put you in a transcendental experience. And I don't mean anything religious or woo-woo or like if I'm not using transcendental as some philosophy. I'm saying taking you out of your mundane experience. That could be space, that could be time, that could be anything in the mundane. Art has a specific role in that a cafeteria doesn't have unless there's a specific culinary artist behind that cafeteria. So art is a very specific thing. So we would disagree there. And part of the transcendental spiritual, I will include the word spiritual experience of a good piece of art is the craftsmanship and the mastery behind that art. I don't ever have to paint in my whole entire life to appreciate a Baroque painting. To really be, you know, to really behold that wonderful, wonderful experience. And so, yeah, we'll differ there, but that's okay. You know, art discussion has there are, I tell you what, like if I was ever on an art panel, I'd probably be the controversial voice because I have such opinions about art, but art is a very heady topic. It's a very controversial topic. It's just based on what people think. Um, Very liminal. Crystal Ashes says, without people around. Are you talking about the cubes? Amy L says, I also went to a talk by an environmental graphic designer, and I think he was trained in Switzerland. That's cool. He learned from a master who treated art and design as the same thing, and he's the same idea. Well, art and design can be the same thing, but artistic direction and I think design can also be a very different thing. Like you can be an interior designer working in graphic design or conceptual design or even physical design, but you can all well, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't really know the vocation of an interior designer, but someone who knows how to dress up a room might not be the artist themselves. So there you go. Crystal Ashes says, I mean, it's no banana duct tape to a wall, but I guess it's passable. Amy L says, and this is important, I've heard something like an artist would use fabric or fiberglass to make an art piece, and when the real craftspeople looked at their work, they were like, no, that's not how you do it. Yeah, there's an element, there's a difference in craftsmanship. Yeah, so actually this is off the topic. Andrea says to Big Al, are you going to review Beetlejuice 2? And Big Al Presents says yes. Crystal Ashes says, I was referring to that stairway with the giant ball in the middle. Oh, yeah. I see, I like the look of it. But again, it's like if something's mass produced and it's I mean, the placement of it is artistically done. I don't know if I would call it art. Now, if you painted that, what if that was a painting? I probably would call it art. And maybe that makes people upset, but I'll see, because it's very nice to behold. very like shapes are attractive to me. But yeah, again, there's and the reason why I'm so strict with my prerequisites, if you will, when it comes to art is because if you start diluting the meaning of art and the function of art, then art ceases to be art because it could be anything else. It could be a sport, it could be a political speech, you know. You can write a good political speech and it can be artistically written even because you're using language in such a wonderful way, but it's meant to serve as a political speech. What is a political speech supposed to do? It's supposed to get you thinking about this certain thing in the political sphere. And if you think like, well, it's art and art can be political, then they're both the same, and it's just not true. They have very specific, very different roles in society. All right, I think this is a good example. What? It's 7 o'clock. Dang it! I have so much fun with this. Well, we're gonna still look at more people. Uh, I'll go. I'll be fast, I guess, about this. It's important to showcase some of this work. I typed in Dan Flavin and then I got Dan. I was typing in Dan Flavor. So let me share this. I'm gonna grab some water real quick. Share. I keep hitting the wrong button. Excuse me. Almost there. There we go. Share. It's colorful. See how colorful it is? It looks great. I mean, this guy, I mean, I will say I'm impressed. Very simple, a lot of different colors. He was very much, I mean, I think this is one of his more famous pieces where it's just a grid with a light in a corner. And I think I can't remember, but I think you can rearrange the grid, or not the grid, but the separate tubes of fluorescent light. I mean, even how this room is lit is pretty artistic. It's pretty cool. A very good sense of light. A little weird that it's a chapel of some kind, but as far as the lighting is concerned, it's fine. Here's a very plain one with just the white. I'm glad I saw this one. This is also a famous one. Now, take a look at this one. I mean, is there simply no representation at all? I don't think so. I mean, when you see this image, what are you thinking? Well, there are 5 ascending lines. They're all together. They're all closed in. There's no space between that. And then the space you do see is this ascension of the blue. The blue is excluded in some way from the yellow and the 3 reds. One, it's a singular color like the yellow, but it's up higher. We associate something with height. It's an ascending line, and you do feel that there is something taking off. This is gestural. And if the minimal artists and critics say, no, there's no gesture, it's like, that is a gesture of some kind. That's nuance of some kind. And if he constructed these tubes, he's a craftsman of some kind. I'm going to admit that. Here's another. Oh, was this the one? No, he does it. He does the same like this. I guess I can't find it. I mean, this is interesting. This would be. I mean, these would be great. Like, again, I'm attracted to this. Like, I'm attracted to the color and shape of a tennis ball. It looks awesome. This would be perfect for like a skating rink. And it's perpendicular. There's some vertical lines. There's some horizontal lines. Everything is evenly spaced. Everything looks very clean. You can see it, when you're up close, it's spatially marked. But then when you go down, there's a delineation of space, which I think that's an artistic direction. I mean, I don't really call this minimal art strictly, but whatever you see. But again, it's super colorful again and super attractive. Here's a quadrant. Oh, sorry, no, I think this is stable diffusion. But again, so this is search, and I'm getting a little ticked off with search engines because it's like I don't want AI art. But again, it gives you actually no. if I remember correctly, the one on this lower right-hand corner, I think that's his. Yeah, I think that is his original work, even though Stable Diffusion has it. But anyway, what was I gonna say? This does give me the impression of like, okay, this would be great for world building and mass production when it comes to a sci-fi world. So there is value in that, and I don't want to discount it. It's very attractive. It's very attractive looking. Got this room with the different lights there, and you can see that they're positioned. It looks like the same distance. Like it looks like the specs are pretty symmetrical. A giant ladder. I like this. Again, I'm attracted to this because of all the lines there, like on the ceiling. I mean, I love architecture so much. And then I think there was, yeah, again, red is going to evoke a very different color from yellow. Just does. You can't avoid it. You cannot avoid it. So that's Dan Flavin, I think is his name. I think that's his name. I hope I had that right. Let's move on. Oh, oops, I left Maria de Maria's name in there, but Google knew what I was talking about. Donald Judd. Talk about him. He's a very very famous minimal artist or minimalist artist. Here's his picture here. So he's all about blocks and lighting, and he is truly all about the mass-produced material. I think this was the one that was auctioned off. It's like slabs of wood, like little like exposed cabinets of some kind, and then he puts it on a wall and calls it art. I mean, again, this is attractive to me, but like again, it's mass-produced. I don't even know if he painted it. Maybe he painted it, but maybe it was already painted, you know, something. I think this could be commonly produced and painted as a mass production. I think he's most famous for, let's see, this installation. And I don't know if it's one installation for different colors and lighting or if it's just several installations of the same. I think it's several of these panels that are pretty symmetrical. They're the same height. There's emphasis on vertical lines, vertical height. You can light these up, I think, as you can see here a little bit. I think it's softly lit there. It does evoke a mood depending on the color, depending on the light, depending on like if it's going to be in a dark room with a lot of light or a light room with very little light, you know. And then you got like these outdoor installations. Like this is art. Again, I love the look of it. I get so excited when I see shapes, geometric shapes, and it just evokes a mood in me personally. I wouldn't call it art though. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, they're different installations. That looks like concept art. That doesn't even look like a real photograph. It doesn't look like a real photograph to me. But there he is with the installation. And then he's known just to lay cubes on the floor or on the wall there. So that's Donald Judd. I guess this is an installation that you can see at a park. I think that's attractive. Did he make it? That's the question, you know. I think it's important that you make your craft. Let's see. Sol Lewitt. Let's talk about Sol Lewitt, and I'll try to speed through here. He is a crossover between conceptual and minimal. And I was talking about his cubes, his work on cubes and lines. I mean, yeah, that's great looking. He placed it as artistic direction. You've got blocks of art that, you know, I will say that's well painted. Using the room space for that is, I think, called wall paintings. That's very well painted. I would say he is truly an artist in that respect. I think that's a picture of him when he's older. You got it here. I think that, yeah, this is also Sol Lewitt. I believe this is at least what Google is showing me. I think this might, yeah, that's AI over there. I just, Google. I don't want AI art. I just want pictures that are representing actual art pieces. You know, this is great. I mean, like, cool. I like that look. And I think if it is painted, it's great. You know, it is art. So he's a little bit working with more traditional material. I think he's most famous for his permutations of cubic structures, uh, like so, with different colors, permutation of colors. By permutation, it's a reordering of the same thing, like, you know, permutation of numbers, using the same numbers in a different order. His wall paintings using a lot of very different lines. I truly, I would sit in a room like that and just kind of space out and watch it, you know. So you've got great use of black and white. And again, if this is hand painted, this is very, very, very impressive. So, oh yeah, and I think he has this, yeah, it with black and white as well. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing an exhibition of his stuff. So it is minimal in that we're just working with geometric shapes, specifically a cube, but he has a good sense of color, though. He has a good sense of color scheme. This is not unattractive by any means. This clashes a little bit, but again, it's not purely unattractive. Got some permutations of red, yellow, blue, gray here, and black and white and gray here, and some vertical lines here. That's a common motif. And all right, so that's Silhouette. Oh, I wanted to talk about this guy. This is important. John McCracken, which is a great last name, if I do say so myself. Yeah, let's talk about him real quick. Here he is. Oh, it's not. Oh, there. That's better. That's him. He kind of looks like a John McCracken. I think that fits well. So he's using monomyths. He's a man of monomyths. Not monomyths, sorry, monoliths. I hope I said monoliths before. Not monomyths, monoliths. And you've got the black monolith, which he did, I think there you go. Like in a room, black monoliths in a white room. Hey, that's conceptually very interesting. I like it. I like the look of that. Did he make those? I don't know if he crafted those. He would install these here on the wall. You can see, and more importantly, well, I like this, you know, I like the symmetry there. One thing I did want to say though, where was it? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this was really important in minimal art, as I mentioned before. Look how these panels are just leaning against a wall. And it's the idea of protruding into the physical space that is where the spectator, the viewer is. So again, I kind of want to just like knock them over and call it an artistic experience. But the point is, it's not installed and fixed on a wall as a type of platform or pedestal of some kind. It's just leaning there as it's supposed to be. But I did want to actually you know, what I do like. That's a pretty good image right here on the, I love it all. It's great. It looks awesome. It looks like something out of Stargate right now. Or Space Odyssey. Where was it though? Let me see if here it is. I like this idea conceptually, where this glass monolith is taking in more space. It looks like it's adding more space or sucking in more space, and that's more of a transcendental experience. Even though this bit of earth here, or this shrub or bush here is in the sunlight is not existing, it's just a reflection. It does cue in on, oh, this is a pretty good idea. Like, I love this idea for landscaping, you know, just you know, it's not a tree, it's the monolith taking in the tree. I do like that very, very much in the way of art. So, some good ideas I think that he has. Yeah, okay, two more, because I don't want to have too much time, but this is where I'm like, okay, is it art or is it design? Hey, I love this idea. Oh, wait, what happened? I gotta get out of here. There we go. There we go. I love this idea. Like these black vertical lines, very thin, in this very weird, you know, white room that's geometric. I mean, and then here's some red lines in a white geometric room. There were some colored lines, yeah, in a geometric. Okay, this is interesting. This is super cool looking. But again, oh, and then this looks awesome. I would say that looks great. I love it. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. Can you see it on your? Yeah, That looks okay. I love that look. But is it art or is it just an installation? Now people say, well, art can be an installation. I said, yes and no. To me, this is artistic direction. He has an eye for this. Is that him? I think that might be him. Yeah, I think that's him. He has an eye for geometry, lines, dimensions. I mean, this looks so cool. Like, I would walk through that. Oh, that's not a good image. Let's go back to this image. Not the best image either, but I would walk through that. That'd be fun. I would love that. Here's an arched doorway with an actual doorway leading to the outside, and then just these three installations that are just black, thin little black L's. And hey, it's cool. Is it art? I would say it's great design. Oh, that's not a good picture. Go back to that one. That's cool. Or this one. It's great design. I love it. But it's not art. It's wonderful artistic direction, but it's not art. If you haven't crafted it yourself, also notice these artists are really employing the medium, or they're creating rather the room to be a medium. It's not just a room. It's a room to note the space and work the installation inside. Now, again, that's perfect for artistic direction. You are a good artistic director. But I'm going to separate you from the actual, artist in that way. So, and it's okay. They didn't want to be artists. So I think they would say it's okay that I said that. One more. Yeah, we didn't get to all of them, I guess. Well, we're missing one, but that's okay. We're running out of time. Frank, Stella. Now here, let's actually talk about him real quick. So he's very much known for black paintings here. That has a lot of lines. And I do believe, so it's very minimal art to just using black and white lines, but mostly black with the white lines etched in. I will say though, where was it? Where was it? I think this actually is an art piece. It hung at an exhibition. Oh, man. There was one. I mean, that's great looking. I mean, it looks good. Like, you have to be specific with the coloring and the lines and the space. So there's a lot of art use there. And then he worked with grids like this and color permutations and so yeah, I think he's working more in the traditional art form, even though he's a minimalist artist. Where I can't find this piece, but it really is minimal, but it's, oh, I think it's this one. If I saw this at a house, this one on the right, I would take a look at it. It's very minimal in composition and color, but it's, I would say, very well crafted. This, as minimal as it is, this is a piece of art. Crafted and painted, also piece of art. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I would call this a piece of art. A piece of art if it was handcrafted, painted, and the color scheme is actually quite nice with the dark greens and grays and red and all that. So I think we'll end it there and just get back to the chat. But yeah, let me just grab some water. All right. So let's continue. Oh, yes, it is. Big Al says on Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, that's great. Good. Yeah, that's my favorite one. That's great. My sister and I used to watch that back to back. It was great. Um, all right. I think. All right, Ghost Planet, I'll see you a little bit later. I'm actually cold. It's cooled down for the weather, and I think I have the AC on, and I'm like, man, I'm getting cold. Crystal Ashes says John McCracken sounds like an action hero name. Yeah, he should have red hair. That's a given. All right. I just want to be sure that I got everyone, but I think that's it. Yeah, thanks for looking at art with me. Or really the minimal art movement. So, okay, so just this will be a little bit longer stream because it's art. maybe my next streams will be shorter. I thought this was gonna be a shorter stream, but apparently not. Apparently, when I talk about art, I can go on, so that's okay. That's par for the course. I took an earlier walk today, so I'm not out on a walk. So just basically, summing this up as far as minimal art, I think I would safely say, and I think the artists of the time would agree with me, that there is a lot more artistic direction than the artwork itself, because they didn't emphasize the work of art itself. They emphasized the mass-produced material, and with conceptual art, they emphasized the idea. They emphasized the immaterial. So it was almost in conjunction. The mass-produced industrial material of the minimal art movement and the immaterial of the conceptual art movement. Either way, you were avoiding the original artwork itself. It wasn't the work. So with the conceptual movement, it wasn't the result. It wasn't the artwork itself. It was the process behind it. And then with the minimal art movement, it was pretty much the removal of art in general, like removal of representation, affiliation, meaning. And at the same time, some of the results were striking and nice to behold. I wouldn't mind walking around some of these pieces. Some of them I really liked. Would I call them art? Well, in my view, just because it looks nice and it is aesthetically pleasing, if there is no craftsmanship behind it, if it is truly, in essence, mass produced, if it's something that can be replicated by other people who are not artists, I can't say it's art. That's my opinion about what art is. That all said, it's if what you're going for is a result that looks nice, then you've done it. It looks great. So anyway, I feel like I had more to say, but I think I sort of said all I wanted to say throughout the stream with the different notes. Yeah, Crystal Ashes says, looks like a wall from some kind of alien planet. Amy L also says, the room space as the medium is called site specific. I find that interesting because whether government funded or corporate funded, it's still funded by an institution. They don't build those buildings. These artists don't build these buildings. Maybe there are some artists out there that have used like demolished places or places that people don't go to, and I get that. But things are rented out. Things are, I just find it so funny that they want their art pieces to be mass produced, but then they're very specific locations. It's like, why can't there? Well, maybe some of these artists like did this, covering the cities, covering the locations. Maybe they did multiple locations of the same multiply produced things. I don't know. I have to look at it. And I guess that would be the point of the minimal art, that it could be everywhere. When it is site specific, you're maybe purposefully, but you are contradicting the whole point of the mass production. Like, the mass production is for the masses. It could be used anywhere. It's a delineation of the significance of art. It's pulling away. It's like it's diffusing. Art, a separate, unique art piece is not what's important anymore. And so again, I said this about the conceptual artists. Why do you need a very specific place for this if it could be used anywhere? Or it should be used anywhere. That's the thing. It's like, put your John McCracken panels, lean them up against any wall, not just, and maybe he did. I'm not saying he didn't. But the idea of a site specific thing is actually contradicting the purpose of this non-commercial use of art anyway. There's a lot to talk about. I just covered the surface. I mean, this is something that like you would read about. You would have like 3 2-hour lectures about. I mean, I skimmed the surface of the minimal art movement. So yeah. Someone named Bob says, yay art! Still not sure about the minimalism or modern art. Wandering away from the keyboard again, listening on Bluetooth. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, thanks for coming, someone named Bob. Thank you also. Shout out to my channel members, Crystal Ashes, Andreas Hernandez, Stunning and Brave Megatron. I think you guys are the channel members here. Oh, Ace Mowick, if you're still here. And yeah, I think that was all of you. as my channel members, so thank you. Um, on the music front, for my own personal music, I've been really channel member, yes, of course. Actually, I didn't mean to forget you, my wonderful husband. It's just that when your name is Blue, I don't associate you as a channel member, even though you have the little insignia next to it. It's because you're a mod, and I see blue instead of green. And I should shout out Big Al for being my mod too. Anyway, um, so on the music side, or for me personally, what's happening now is I've been spending pretty much the bulk of this month trying to produce this album, and it's almost there. I'm about like 15-20% done of the mix, and then I still have to record violin if I can. It's gonna be 8 tracks. Second Chances is gonna be part of it, and it's my first time mixing and mastering my own album. So I hope it's so far it's coming along. So far I'm liking what I'm hearing. But there's a long way to go before I can release it, and I'd like to release it in like under 4 weeks. So actually, unfortunately, I got to get out of this habit, but I've only been mixing for the times I'm not teaching or cooking or cleaning or whatever. I've been mixing, and with that, I've not been able to go back to SuperCollider or even write sci-fi. It's been a couple weeks since I've written science fiction, so I got to get back to that. So, but really, this month is mixing and mastering my album. If that's all that takes, if that's all I do this month, then that's fine. I'm learning a lot. But again, I wanted to talk about art. Next week, I might. I haven't decided. I'm finishing up the book Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for the fall season, and I really would like to. I really would like to do a moral analysis, an analysis on morality of the book. It would include spoilers, and don't spoil it for me because I'm like, I still have to finish the end. But I think the book has a seminal significance when it comes to the theme of knowledge and acquiring knowledge and morality that comes with acquiring knowledge or the lack of morality. There's just a lot to that book, and so if I have a good analysis for it, I think I'll do Frankenstein. I think I'll do a Frankenstein analysis. If not, then I already have a topic I do want to talk about. It's a very sticky topic. I need to be very careful approaching it because it could be. I could inadvertently say something that like might put off people or put people off, but I don't mean to. But I would want to talk about, I'll say this much. RJ from the Fourth Age did a recent video on feminism in our IPs and the herd mentality, and he was assessing why our IPs won't survive, and that's because as soon as it's not popular with women, because it's been written for women in the last 15 years or so. As soon as women move on, they're going to move on. They're not going to stick with an IP. And that's actually true. Most women, I'm not saying all women, I love Stargate and no one talks about Stargate. But most women will just stick with what's popular, what's on Netflix, what's like water cooler talk, but just for women. And so once Star Wars ceases to be popular among women, that's where it's really going to go downhill if it hasn't already. So he was talking about that, and then he talked about the herd mentality, and I started thinking, I think we do have our own herd mentality, and it comes to supporting works of art that's not really good, but we support the work of art because of how much we like a certain YouTube personality. And I kind of want to talk about that. I want to talk about like parasocial relationships and have kind of an honest discussion about that if it comes to it. So if I don't talk about Frankenstein next week, I would talk about that. So anyway, this is almost a 2-hour stream. I guess I should have seen that. Should have seen that coming. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Okay, so Crystal Ashes says, I'll have to read Frankenstein myself then. I will try my very best not to make it a spoiler. But the stuff I want to talk about might have to just talk about how the events are played out. So we'll see. we'll see. Yeah, lots of interesting topics ahead. If it's not Frankenstein, it's going to be talking about parasocial internet relationships and how that could be a good thing for art and how that can be a very bad thing for art, because I'm seeing some. I just gotta get some stuff off my chest when it comes to that. So we'll talk about that within next week or the week after. So more streams to come. So with that, I will bid you a farewell. I'll bid you a good night. Thank you, Scorpio. Good talk. Have a great week and see you next time. Yeah, we'll end it there. So guys, thank you so much for watching. And until I see you next, keep producing, preserving, and promoting good art that you love, even if it's minimal. And I'll catch you later. Thank you.